I want to first welcome all of our residents. Thank you. This is the February 4th. February 4th.
4. Yep.
What's this? February 4th
The minutes.
meeting of the Shrewsbury Housing Authority. And I want to welcome everybody from all of our various residences, from Francis Gardens, Elizabeth Gardens, and obviously the Towers, which is hosting us tonight. And with that, we'll start the meeting.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to accept the January 2020 minutes as printed.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Treasurer's report. Healthy bank account balance. Anything you want to note, Kelly?
James did his operating statements.
Yep.
And they're highlighted at the bottom, and they're all good.
Oh, my God.
Okay.
It was the operating statements, and it's highlighted at the bottom, and they're all good.
And it's all positive, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And with that, we're going to get into the revolving account, please. And do we have any questions, comments, discussion? I noticed the price of the audit. $14,280.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's each year.
Yeah. And how many audits do we do each year?
For the state in the AUP,
Mm-hmm.
it's each year, yearly.
And then the feds?
Yearly also.
Okay. Okay, any questions, comments? Any of the
Just one,
expenditures?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Better Electric for appliances, almost $4,000. Is that our usual? We buy a bunch, we store them, we flip them out as we need them, they hold them for us kind of deal?
Yes, there was some for Francis Gardens and 2 in stock for the Towers.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah,
That-
if you look at Gary's explanation.
Oh, I didn't get
on the next
that, my
page.
apologies,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is,
He
exactly.
actually
Yeah, yeah,
itemized it.
yeah,
Yep.
exactly, okay.
Okay, anybody else? If not, then I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion that we pay
The
the
vendors.
check vendor register in the amount, oh, it's low, $72,791.28.
Do we have a second?
Second.
And any other discussion? None, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous, thank you. And next, we have the portability checks in the amount of $3,962.80. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to pay the $3,962.80 for the portability checks.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'll keep it going if everyone
Unanimous,
wants.
that's good.
I'd like to make a motion that we pay the landlord checks in the amount of $123,060.56.
Just for clarification, that's landlords and tenants.
Oh, yeah, okay, thank you. Yep.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous, thank you. And we have the payroll.
Make a motion to print the payroll in the amount as
I
printed.
need you to speak up, please, because people can't hear.
Okay,
Make
we're
a-
trying.
Make a motion to print the payroll as printed, to pay the payroll, approve the payroll as printed.
Second.
Second, all in favor? Okay. All right, we're into correspondence. Kelly,
These were narrows, just weekly wrap-up. The governor's fiscal year '21 budget includes $70 million in subsidy. Mass Narrow Housing Committee met with DHCD regarding the annual plan, resident service coordinator, capital update, regulatory reform, and CHAMP. And the last is register for the 2020 legislative day on March 9th, if you guys would like to go.
I'll go.
so the NARO committee met with DHCD relative to CHAMP. Do you have any, did you get any information
I have not.
about that?
No.
No. Or maybe when our state rep gets here, we can ask her if she was aware of that. Okay. Anything else on the correspondence, Kelly, that you feel we need to know?
For now, no.
Okay.
This is a
Yep.
week early with the board meeting.
Okay, so vacancy reports. Francis Gardens,
As you see on the first apartment, the 3 offers were not from Shrewsbury.
right?
And Shirley is in the process of offering, in the chair process. The next apartment is extensive turnaround. There was a former smoker in there.
Yep.
In Elizabeth Gardens is an administrative transfer. In family units, no vacancies.
Now, that
So-
administrative
Yeah, I was
transfer,
just
does
gonna
that
ask the
open a
same question.
vacancy?
That was my question.
Yes, that will be open in a vacancy.
All right. And, so is that apartment number 13, has that already been moved? Or is it just in the process of being fixed for the move?
He's in the process,
Okay.
going over there.
Okay, so that'll be within the date-ready turnaround of 30 days, right?
Yes.
Okay, okay. All right, and you can see, everybody, the vacancy turnover comparison from 2017 to present. We're right up there with the top. Although, we got 2 months left.
So
Yeah.
we'll pass it.
We'll pass it. Yep. The next item on the agenda here is this a CHAMPS wait
Yep.
list tab?
That's the poll list for apartment 93.
Up above, so you go by.
Yeah, right. So, does anybody have any questions about this?
Yeah,
Except that we have out-of-town residents?
but they're veterans. The 2 of them are veterans.
Yep.
So Kelly, or maybe even Shirley, my question would be, if these are in rank order, what gave whoever is number 2, and we don't even know that person, so there's no confidentiality here, what gave number 2 a higher priority than number 3 or number 4, given that 3 and 4 were a veteran and 2 wasn't? Is that an answer that you or Shirley could give us?
Homeless.
Does the board understand my question?
Yes,
Could have been-
yeah,
could
no,
have
probably
been- Could have
homeless.
been homeless?
Homeless is the only thing well, Shirley knows.
Shirley, I know you're
I'm
here.
right here.
Okay,
I just need to look at the form.
you don't know off the top of your head, right?
No, I
I
don't.
can carry that with you.
Oh, come on, don't you memorize these, Shirley?
Oh, okay, thank you. All right, so number 1 was offered a different unit, a different site.
Right,
Number 2.
so 2 is who I'm asking about, correct?
Number 2 was a priority for which, an emergency case.
Probably homeless, right?
No, it was actually a medical emergency, yes, because it could be,
So give us a for instance without talking about this particular person.
right, so, priority 4 would be either homeless. It could also be like a medical emergency where the person is living is, it could be, harmful for whatever, health situation the person has.
Like domestic violence?
It could be domestic violence as well. So in this particular case, it was strictly medical. And actually,
Could medical mean they were on a 3rd floor and needed a 1st floor? I mean, I'm looking for a little guidance around what medical might be.
so yes, that could be part of it. If the letter that the doctor provides is very specific in that way, then yes, we
Okay.
have to accommodate the person. So actually, number 2, I was really hoping that she would take unit 93 because it was the 1st floor. But I was actually, with the CHAM system, I was fighting with another housing authority to get that person to accept our unit. The tenant opted to take the other unit
In another
in another
housing authority, Grafton, Marlboro, something, whatever,
Right.
okay.
Number 3 was disqualified. because he failed to bring in information on time. So that, it didn't go to that number 3 either.
Okay.
So it went to number 4. Number 4, looked at the unit today and accepted it.
That's great. We want to see local and veteran, so I'm glad veteran, but you answered my question, so. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
And we go through, Shirley, the same process on the South Street.
Yes, so I'm in the process now of sending out the packets, vacancy packets, and screening process.
And there's no locals on that 10?
No locals whatsoever, and surprisingly, when I put in what the apartment, it's a 2-bedroom apartment, it's a handicap accessible. It didn't even give me the 25 people, it gave me only 20. So that's the amount of people that is in the CHAMP system that have signed up for possibly Shrewsbury in a 2-bedroom handicap accessible unit. No Shrewsbury's whatsoever.
So there's no Shrewsbury residents that are signed up for that? That's hard to believe.
Yeah, that's
Because
what
I hear from
mentioned
people
to-
all the time about
I
how come my
mentioned to
daughter never
Kelly,
gets
yeah,
called.
that it's sad, because I'm sure there's a family in Shrewsbury that must need a handicap accessible unit.
Oh, I'm sure there are. I hear from people all the time, and I'm sure the rest of you do too. And I can't believe they're not on this list.
Nothing.
Why would they not be on this list if they,
Maybe they don't know about that we have a vacancy, maybe we need to advertise, or, you know?
Yeah.
Maybe reach out to the school systems, if they have any families
Yeah, I'm
or
not gonna
children
take questions.
that are handicapped.
Okay.
I was very surprised.
Gail?
I have a question, Shirley, on the status. Could you just explain that status, the verified 29 days ago, verified so many, what is that?
So that means that, when I send out letters of verification, the person is supposed to respond within a time frame.
And what is that time frame? Because I noticed there's
Yeah, so
quite
the
a
time frame is
discrepancy.
10 days, within 10 days they have to respond.
Okay,
And then whatever information I got is good for 90 days.
okay,
So this is pretty much, where it says verified 29 days, that's like a countdown.
okay.
So
Thank
when
you.
the 29 days expire, I have to recertify them again.
Oh, thank you.
But that says unverified, unverified.
We go up to the other one. Those are verified.
This one?
Those-
Yeah. Okay, so this list was just pulled.
Right,
That's why it's unverified.
right.
Okay. Thank you, Shirley.
You're welcome.
Gets a little bit confusing.
It is.
Wow, okay. Anybody have any questions at all on that?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
She answered me.
Shrewsbury Towers?
No vacancies.
No vacancies. And you can see the comparison there.
We're in great shape compared to state,
Sure.
half of our high, from 4 years ago, no less.
Yeah. Okay. Is that incorrect?
Yeah, I think it is, the
Yeah.
one above it, yes.
And the one above that?
No.
No,
20
where it
is
says,
correct.
where they all start 4/1/2016, it should be 2016, 2017,
Yeah,
2008, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, so if you can correct that.
But you're saying, Kelly, the numbers might be also incorrect, the 4 apartments?
Just the one above it, the number 4 is, we surpassed that.
Yeah, you wanna
Yeah.
double check that? Correct
But
it
as of
the next month,
now, we are at 10 apartments in fiscal year.
in this fiscal year.
Yes.
Okay. All right, and the Section 8 voucher program is up to snuff. Everything is okay, right, Kelly?
Yes, we're getting a lot of portabilities in, so we're up to 5 we're porting. Hosting for other housing authorities,
Oh, really?
yes.
That's up from what?
It was 2.
So they're taking our certificate and going elsewhere.
No, they're actually
Other way
coming.
around.
Coming here with
Yeah.
with another, okay, all right.
Yeah, we're hosting them.
Oh, yeah, okay. Okay. All right. Then we have the social service report. Anybody have any questions? It's right in line with everything, right? You're pretty much steady in that one? Thank you, Shirley. Okay. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. Well, everybody else set with the social
All
service?
set.
Okay, now we have the
Yes.
letter from the Board of Health. Kelly, do you want to talk about that, or?
At the last board meeting, a tenant was concerned about
Use of the kitchen at
use
Francis
of the
Gardens?
kitchen at Francis Gardens. So the Board of Health contacted me and spoke with that person also. And the long and short of it is, as long as they're not preparing food for the general public, meaning anyone from the outside, they're fine. It's a private situation.
So if you're preparing food in our kitchens for the people that live here, and the people that live here are eating it, then that's okay. However, they do recommend ServSafe certification,
Yes,
as well as allergen certification.
yes.
It's only recommended, however, and anti-choke certification. So, so the thing that we have to watch for is to make sure that it's not a dinner that's open to the public.
Correct.
Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
All right.
Excuse me. I was the one that brought up the question at the Francis Gardens meeting about the health, the safety code. We do have people that come in on special occasions who are from the outside. And I wondered if anyone needed to know the Heimlich maneuver in case anything should happen with the choking. Usually with, other outside restaurants or whatever, or organizations, they really need to know that.
Yeah, but this isn't a restaurant.
I've used it a couple of times
Well-
in classrooms.
Well, first of all, it's not a restaurant. It's not,
I understand that.
and they have recommended certain programs for people that are interested in taking those programs, and part of that is an anti-choke program, which I assume probably includes Heimlich-type
Correct.
maneuvers.
Correct.
So that is recommended, however, it's not required.
Well, recommended is more on the safety side of the thing.
Well, I'm not gonna debate with you, all I know is what they told us.
And I would
Right.
think that one person who's in charge or whatever, whoever is designated to have that, they're going to be there on certain occasions, maybe should learn, somebody should learn.
Well, perhaps if they're listening to you, they'll listen to you, but right now, I'm not gonna debate it. We can open it up for some discussion later, or we'd be happy to talk to you
And
later,
I
okay?
just wanted to, bring that up. I thought it was a very good point as far as safety issues concerned, better safe than sorry. So, I was just looking into all the aspects of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, well, as you know, as you now know, we have had correspondence with the Board of Health, and they have given us the long and short of it, so,
Very good.
okay? Okay, okay.
Richard,
Mel, why don't we wait until after I get through?
I was just gonna suggest that people that speak identify themselves, so we'll know who they are.
I was trying not to do that with someone who, but I understand what you're saying.
Okay?
I'm
I'd
trying,
like to know who to blame or praise.
well, right, it's like identifying the whistleblower.
That's right.
Didn't I discuss this last meeting?
You can't say it.
Now, the certificate that I see here, Kelly, is this completed?
Mario completed his
Oh,
certification.
good. So Mario, you did complete your certification on allergen awareness.
I
I have it right here.
We have it right here,
I wanna
so.
give it to Kelly, put my file, so there's no more further, talking about what's going on.
Actually, Kelly, if you would post that also down in the kitchen at Francis Garden.
I have it posted in the garden, at Francis Garden,
Okay,
in my cabinet in the kitchen. I'm not
Okay.
putting it on the wall, but it's in the kitchen.
okay. All right. That's the allergen awareness program. What,
Yes.
are you gonna, while we're talking about it, are you gonna take any of the other courses as well?
I don't have to.
No, you don't.
I'd be willing to, but I mean, the thing of it is, I've taken too many cheap shots, okay? I'm tired of it.
Okay, but not from us, Mario, so take it easy,
And
okay?
you know that now.
Yep. All right. Okay. Do we have the people here from the Community Preservation Act discussion? Okay,
I just pinged her to see where she is.
I have some information on voter, stuff I emailed you.
okay, so we have a little bit of new business from Ms. McSweeney.
Some of you attended the selectmen's office hours last Monday, and one of the questions that came up was what to do about election day, and could they possibly provide van service. I spoke with Beth Cassavant today. She has spoken to Kevin Vizikar, who's the town manager, and he is working on it. So he's working with the people that are in charge of that, so we'll have an update for you on that. I also grabbed, which I'll give with Kelly, applications for absentee ballots. You can submit this, and they will mail you your ballot, and then you just have to have it back. Election day is March 3rd. It needs to be back at the town hall by March 3rd, not postmarked by March 3rd, but back by March 3rd. Or you could go up now for early voting, which is kind of absentee, so if you're up there, you can go in and vote. Or the last week of February is early voting.
Early voting.
So there are a lot of opportunities. If you're out and about, you can stop at the town hall and essentially vote. You can send this in and they'll mail it to you. Or I will check, probably week after next, I'll update Kelly on the van situation when I hear.
So anybody that is interested in, or feels that they need the van, you might want to check in with Kelly, because we aren't going to have another meeting between now and then,
So I'll get word to you like around the 19th,
Okay.
because Election Day is
the 3rd.
the 3rd of March,
March 3rd.
okay?
Yep.
So is everybody clear on that?
Yes.
Sheila, are you clear?
I have another question from that same night.
There was the article in the newspaper.
Um,
I haven't found it yet.
There's, well, there was an article in the paper. But we also had a meeting with Cynthia Willis.
She's here.
About the transportation situation. And some of us had questions about that. And it's been like 2 weeks.
About the
No
van,
answers.
on the van on election day, or was it something else?
No, about other situations that happen with the transportation here in town, and we still haven't heard back. I made a submission asking for an accounting statement of how many times I've used the transportation here in town, like to go to doctor's visits and stuff, which is what I use it for. And I called again today. This has been 6 weeks.
So let me get this correct. Are you asking them for an accounting of how many times you used the van?
Yes,
Why-
because for my certification, I have to show how much I paid and how many times I've used the transportation. I asked, in the middle of December, I asked for this documentation. I called today. They still do not have any idea when I will get that.
Are you talking about the Council on Aging?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So because I know, you've been involved with some of the other meetings that we've had here. And one of them was with Cynthia Willis. And there were a couple of us at that meeting that had very distinct questions that we needed answers for.
That's the Council on
And
Aging.
like how much we should pay for a trip to Shrewsbury to Shrewsbury, or Shrewsbury to Worcester. and we still haven't heard any answers back.
Kelly?
I have a meeting with Holly in a couple of weeks. She reached out to me yesterday. She wants to go through everything, 'cause she's still new. And she wants to go through all the policies and everything that we have in the
So
future.
maybe after-
What I don't understand is why, when I made a submission, because we got our certification papers the end of December, and
Well-
that's when I made,
Well, we'll try to help
asking-
you, Sheila,
and-
but we're
and-
not the Council on Aging, so.
Oh, I know, but I'm
No.
just saying, because Kathy has worked with, some of the other offices here in town, like the Council on Aging and some of the other.
All right, well, as Kelly just said, she's gonna be having a meeting with them. Maybe she can follow up with you after that
Okay.
meeting, maybe even
Okay,
before, just
thank
to make
you.
sure you get all the points that she's talking about.
I will.
Thank
Okay.
you.
You're welcome.
Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, thank you for bringing it to our attention. We've always been interested in the use of that van and the cost to our residents, because, as you know, we subsidize that van. through the
Yes,
housing
I
authority. So-
understand that.
So we feel that it should be
And it's not a
available.
small amount of money either.
And we feel that it should be something that is available to our residents on a regular basis. So we're working on it, Sheila, and
Yeah.
as I said, we're not the Council on Aging, and we're not the only one that contributes to that ban, but we'll see if we can get some answers to you through Kelly, okay?
Thank you.
And with that, I'd like to welcome our Representative Hannah Kane to our meeting. State Representative Kane, how are you?
Hi, Hannah.
Good.
Hi, Emma.
Hello, how's everyone? Good to see you all.
We're lucky to be here.
Me too.
Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. So I apologize for being late. I was at the State House today and
No apology necessary.
late meeting with the governor, so I apologize. But I
Nickel.
wanted to come here and update all of you on the conversations that we've been having relative to the CHAMP system and its implementation.
Can't hear you. You got it back to us.
Kelly.
I apologize, my back is going to be towards
Want a
you.
lavalier?
Sure, whatever. I'm sure I'm gonna stick it here, but,
You can even hold it if you want.
oops.
Can you hear me now?
You'll tell me that in 1 second when I get this on here. Can you hear me? Is that better at all?
Yeah, but I'm right behind you, they're not.
Okay, I don't think this is on.
Kelly, did you shut that thing off?
There's no, I don't think it's on. I don't think there's a battery to it.
Do we have technical assistance here?
Yeah. Technical problems.
Huh?
Use it as a mic.
I don't think there's nothing, it's not showing that it's on or working. Is this better?
Nope.
No,
Is that work?
maybe the speaker ain't on.
Is this better? No, it's not. There's no light on it. It's not working.
Well, just bang it on the table.
So I will speak up.
Hannah, why don't you, I'll tell you what, you wanna pull your chair up to here? And I'll pull your chair up to here and
That's an idea.
we'll bring you to the end of the table here, okay?
Probably could hear it, yeah, that's better.
Richard, what a gentleman you are.
So you all are gonna have my back for that. Apologies.
Get cozy.
All right, is this better?
Yeah.
All right. So for the benefit of everyone here, because you all know a lot of this in terms of what we're talking about, let me give a little bit of a additional background. So last fall, you all began discussions with me relative to some of the challenges with the implementation of the new CHAMP system. We had a meeting in December, Kelly and Richard and Kathy and I, relative to the questions that they had and some of the implementation issues relative to the CHAMP system. Based on our meeting, I recommended a few changes to the letter that you were going to send me and asked for some specifics so I could use those as I went forward and talked to the folks at the state level. You got me that letter and I had a meeting on January 22nd with the Undersecretary of the Department of Housing and Community Development, who is charged overall with the housing authorities and the program implementation. In the course of that meeting, I brought up some of the challenges that you all had addressed to me, including the challenges relating to some of the time it's taking you to fill an open slot that you have, the number of applicants that you have to send information out to in order to do that, and some of the timing implications that alone has with it in the administrative class. And then also around the question of, because of the implementation of a statewide list, what does that mean in terms of our local preference, and how has that impacted that? I provided your letter that you sent me to the Department of Housing and Community Development so that they could specifically address these issues. When they came to the meeting, they brought me some information, which is largely just a generic overview of everything, and I said that's great, but I have specific things that I would like you to address. Some of the things they were able to address in the meeting, and some of the things they had to go back and do some additional research on. So I'll run through some of the things that we had talked about. In the meeting I had with them, they relayed to me that on average, applicants were applying to 3.5 communities or municipalities that had a local housing authority. That was the number. And that also 84% of the people who were being housed were coming from with local preference. I asked them, how does that information break down? So my gut level was that cities, which have much larger housing authorities and more applicants, would skew it that those people would be getting local preference because there's more that they can. But my guess was that it would break down differently in towns, and particularly between 25 and 50,000 and under 25,000. I asked them if they could go back and look at that to break that number down. When they went back and looked at it, they actually found an error in a calculation that they were doing. So the new statewide average number they gave me was that 63% of housed applicants were granted local resident preference. And that when you break that down even further, there is a discrepancy or difference between cities and towns. And so when we were looking at it for Shrewsbury, what they told me was that there are, at the time, and this was one day in time, so numbers change every day, but on the day that they pulled this information, there were 3,325 unique applicants for Shrewsbury. Of that, 4% were claiming local preference. In particular, I walked through with them the situations that you had brought to my attention regarding the family housing and who was going in there. And you had brought to my attention two different scenarios. One was relative to a family who was coming from Devon's, and another was from an out-of-state placing. When I asked them about out-of-state overall, if they were seeing in that system, this was the first case that they were aware of that was coming from out-of-state. And so when they looked into that one, the issue was because it was a domestic violence situation, which had elevated on the list, and that there were ties to Massachusetts from this person. And the reason that they were leaving New York was because the person who they had the restraining order on had found them. And so they wanted to get far out of the area, and they applied back to Massachusetts for housing. And because of how the preferences rate, they were able to get this spot when it opened up.
That's a preference for.
Yes.
Okay, I listen.
Yeah, good, I'm proud of you.
So the other situation, again, was because there was another domestic violence situation, I believe, as well in the other situation. So that is what raised up
Elevates
these
them,
folks in terms of, and they are, DHCD was actually very thankful to have the example from New York, because one of their concerns has been monitoring this. being a right to shelter state and coming back in, there are concerns about, whether or not a larger out-of-state population could potentially apply to be on the list. So they were thankful to you
And I think that's clear.
for raising the issue. So far, again, they said that this was the only one that they had seen. I asked them to go back and look and perhaps do an inquiry out, to find out whether or not anyone else had come across something like this. In terms of the
Can I just ask you a
Yeah, sure.
question? Did I hear you correctly that 4% of our presently 3,000 plus list for Shrewsbury, only 4% is local preference?
Yes, the
That's
statewide
unbelievable.
average on cities is 15%
Yeah,
for local preference.
Yeah, but that's the math of big numbers.
that's the math of big numbers, and
Correct,
that's where
which
cities.
is why
and-
when I met with them and they gave me their number at the time, I said, I think you need to go back into that data and break it down, because I don't, I acknowledge that there probably are places that is true, but because of the volume, it skews the number for those of us who have less. And so you need to actually go back in and look at it. I had gone back to them, again, asking more questions when they sent me the first email with answers to my questions, pushing more on understanding in Shrewsbury in particular. I wanted to understand the notion of, okay, you told me on average it was 3.5 housing authorities were selected when somebody goes in. There is no ability to choose all, which was something I think thought there was.
We
You
did
can't
think
just,
so, yeah.
you cannot. You have to go in and select every place that you want to go. So there is no global selection.
But is there a limit to how many you can choose?
There's no limit.
Okay.
But it's not as easy as like just
Checking off all.
like
It's tedious. You'd have to check
You have to go down
335
through.
communities if you want it all.
So when they came back to me, again, this was the information when I first met with them, when I had them do some more data digging, they came back to me and said, now the statewide average is 5.3. So it had changed from November at 3.5 to when I had them pull it again this last week, it was 5.3 was the average number. I asked them to break it down into who was applying specifically to Shrewsbury. Can you pull it and tell me what that number? For us, the average number was 77. So for people who are choosing Shrewsbury as one of their, they're on average choosing 76 other communities as well.
Oh my God.
Now, again, part of that can be, and what I've asked them to look at is proximity to a major city. So my guess, my pure guess, but my guess is the communities that exist with housing authorities around a major urban center get selected a lot versus a community that's not near any
Northampton.
major urban center and would be harder for somebody to go back and forth between.
That makes sense.
So, and
Logically,
I think that that's what, they had not done this analysis as a whole before I asked them if
course
they
not.
could go back and do this for us in particular. And I think it verified to them that, these conversations and these questions are important to answer. I stressed to them that part of the relationship building between the state and the local housing authorities is actually sharing this data. And giving the information back to cities and towns so they know, like, for sure that what they feel like they're experiencing is validated or not by the data that was coming in. And they said their goal is to get there, in part because they just went live in April. They're still working out some of the issues, and you saw when they initially thought it was 84% when they pulled and then went back in and realized it was 63%, that they don't want to fully release this data yet because they're not confident in it. And so they're working through those issues, but their goal is to get to that point. I talked with them about the notion of the 25, and I did confirm with them that you don't need to pull 25. That is what the system automatically does. You can adjust it to whatever number you want. So if you only want to send out 5, you can send out 5. The issue becomes if you're getting back in a large number that won't work for some reason, or it doesn't, then you're gonna have to go back out. So they say they defaulted the system to 25 because they felt like it would give you enough that you would find somebody in that pool that would work. But it's your choice. You could do 1, you could do 100, you can do what you want, you have to change it on the system, but that's your choice.
Shirley, you can hear this, right?
Yes.
Good, good.
I asked them about this notion of when people check off that they are qualified for a priority or preference, how that works. And it is, so right now there's no sharing of information. So the state can see what you're up to, but no other local housing authority can. And that was by request of the local housing authorities. The state originally wanted to be able to give everyone insight into somebody. So in this case, if you have somebody who has applied here and they've checked off, that they have a priority, and when they have to illustrate that priority, because you have to prove, if they're not able to do that to you, what the local housing authority says, we don't want that to be checked off that they can't illustrate that priority. If they apply to another housing authority, that housing authority may interpret differently or have a different level of, so they didn't want somebody to be blocked out of this. Again, this was driven by the local housing authorities, not the state. They wanted the ability, each local housing authority, to decide whether or not somebody, or maybe how much they wanted to work with them to help get it there, et cetera. What they're looking to do in an update coming forward in the next couple months is to actually have the conversation with housing authorities about the ability to share some of this information that it exists there. So whether it's proof that their priority exists, somebody could enter in and put, here's my proof that I have this priority, and that could be shared among the local housing, so you can see it. And also shared information across the platform among housing authorities. That is something that they're working on and hopefully will be able to implement because they agree that would be helpful, but they didn't do it because they were asked not to do that originally. They are also, as I said, looking to be able to provide more information back to communities in the future. They really wanted 1 year of data, so they were hoping to get through April of 2020, and then being able to provide more information back based on, given this year, here's what we have seen in your community, like that we have, and to set a baseline, so to be able to follow that. In terms of Shrewsbury, I asked them for the 3,325 folks who have selected Shrewsbury, the 4% with local preference, the 133 on this given day when this data was pulled. They told me that of all the applicants on Shrewsbury's waiting list, 3 claim veteran preference and 20% claim a homeless priority. Of the local applicants, the 133 on that day, and then it was 130 when they pulled it yesterday, 12 claimed veteran status, and 16 claimed homeless status on that. Again, that fluctuates daily depending on what people are putting in there. But they have been able to pull this data down, which the good side is, I think we have better access to data than, in terms of when we tried to do the look back in terms of doing the comparison, it wasn't easy to do. So at least now they can pull this information.
But when we're pulling 25, like we do, we're pulling 25 out of that 3,000 plus, right? So, and there's no give or take that says that we're gonna have a Shrewsbury resident in that poll at all.
It's possible.
But it's only possible. It's not happening, however. I mean, we just pulled 25 and
Well,
no locals
Okay.
on it at all.
So
Isn't
of the 8 applicants that have been housed through CHAMP since July of 2018, because that's when you started putting your information in, 75% were housed with local preference for Shrewsbury. Of the 8 applicants, 2 were non-local residents were housed in the family program, which we're aware of, and the other 6 local residents were housed in the elderly handicap program. And both of the non-local applicants, again, were homeless because of domestic violence, so they actually triggered 2 on the list of, and that's always gonna be a problem for us because we have limited family So it's gonna be hard because of that, and they are aware of that, and I, had the full conversation with them about, at some point, local housing authorities no longer become, we can't call them anymore local housing authorities. Like, what are we, we need to, I understand technology, and I understand our priorities, but we have to balance and make sure that local housing authorities are actually local housing authorities. So they are aware. It's nothing I relayed to them was news to them. I mean, this is all things they've held before.
Yeah, I have a question. The self-selection, veteran, homeless, domestic abuse, does the state vet that?
The state does not vet that. The housing authority, again, because first of all, somebody to this notion of you might not theoretically be able to prove something one day, and you may be able to prove it on a different day.
So it's up to us to verify.
But we vet that, we vet.
You do.
I mean, I know
Yes.
that, but I'm saying,
It's up to us to
when
get-
they
see the
get,
restraining order or
but it can
whatever.
be a key, it can be a way to get to the top of the list, and by the time they get selected, because they figure this, they can then scramble to try and figure out how to vet that, that's what I'm saying, so.
Yeah, and there are people who check it because they believe it will get them, but then they
Exactly.
can't prove
Right,
it.
so that's what I'm saying.
And what I said was, are you working, and they're, again, they don't wanna kick people off, and again, the local housing authorities wanted to have the control
Right.
to vet people
Right.
and know whether or
Yeah,
not
which we
that
do.
was.
Right.
So that was a little bit of the, one of the other questions that you asked me was regarding the issue of transfers. And so there are two types, one that needs to go through CHAMP and one that doesn't. And that the ones that we talked about regarding if you have a medical condition and you used to be on the second floor but now you can't do stairs, requesting a first, you don't need to go through CHAMP for that. So I think that was, you have
That
more
was the
control.
question. That was the question.
You have, yes, and they said if you think you have to, talk to the housing management specialist, because it may just be how the system appears to you, but you don't have to do that. And so I think that gives us, again, back some,
So that was one of the ones that set me into order, so I'm thrilled to hear that.
Yeah, me too.
So, and that's what we've been doing, administrative transfers regarding
yes,
the stairs.
yep. And so you should be able, so again, what the state cares about is there's a unit open. Whether, what floor it's on or what, issue is irrelevant to them. It's very relevant to us here, and so you have the ability to do that, and they, quite frankly, don't want to be in the way of that, that's not the intention. So, I had mentioned, again, moving forward, what they're working on in partnership with NARO is this notion of allowing more information sharing across the local housing authorities. And also, I asked them what they could do relative to this notion of people choosing priority or preference that they actually should not have chosen. Sometimes I said, do you have enough information that they know they're actually making the wrong choice? Like, do we tell them what you're going to need? Like, if you select that box, does it pop up and say, if you're choosing this, it means you need to be able to prove X, Y, Z, which it doesn't now. And so I said, you would help the housing authority, because some people, I think, are doing it to game the system.
Sure, of course.
Some people are doing it because they're just not cognizant and fully, aware of what it means to select that. They may feel that they are, but then if they look at what the criteria, it may not be. So I said, I really think you need to figure out how on the portal side for the person using the system to determine, help them regulate whether or not they are going to be able to qualify if indeed they are asked, to be an applicant somewhere and send information back in. So they did say that they're working on that as well. And they did say that they are, again, wanting to get to the place where they can provide information back to the local housing authority. So we would know or be able to pull in Shrewsbury exactly this data that I'm supplying to you today versus having to go through me to get it. And to every other city and town. They're just not, and I understand it, they're not confident yet enough to do that. They feel like they need a year's worth of data
Makes sense.
to really go in and pull, and then to find these issues in the system, like they found when they went back in and discovered it wasn't 84%, it was 63%.
Well, I hope you understand that. I still don't have a lot of confidence that we have a good handle on the local
You don't, and Shrewsbury, again, because of the fact that we're skewed higher than any other community is relative to the number of communities that are being selected. So we're not at the 5.3, because if you're at 5.3, chances, one's your home community,
Right.
and maybe one is like adjacent right around you. So it might be, in proximity to where we are here.
Sure.
Shrewsbury in particular, and I've also asked them to find out what other cities and towns are in the same boat, skews extremely high. So our people who are selecting Shrewsbury are selecting 76 other on average. And
It's
so,
all that
So
stupid
that
press
doesn't-
about being a good place to live and a safe town and
It
all
doesn't,
that.
it doesn't bode well for local preference,
Right,
is
right.
the problem.
correct. And that is why, again, the statistic of when you look at our list of 3,325 people on the list, only 4% have local preference right now. So it does make it a challenge.
So I guess when April rolls around or somewhere thereafter, maybe they'll come up with some statistics that maybe they'll share with everybody, but.
Yeah, I mean, I have
bet
no,
it's gonna require you to go back to them and say, hey, you're gonna share that?
yeah, I mean, and I have no problem going back to them in the interim. I do think that they're working towards that, and I think they realize, and what I stressed to them was this notion of trust, like, you have to share the data, right? It may not be data we're happy with, but we need to understand it. And again, even though right now we only have 4%, which are local preference, when you look back over the 75% of those, 6 out of 8 were local preference that got housed here. So, and 2 were not.
Are they taking into consideration the transfers regarding that?
That seems so high to me based on
Yeah.
all the numbers
It
I've
just
seen.
doesn't seem right.
It doesn't
because-
seem like it adds up to tell you the
Because we've been
truth.
complaining about this, and, I mean, look at our latest poll, there's not one local on the latest poll, not one,
That's why I had asked you if you all had the information for me to take to the meeting.
yeah.
And
we're-
don't.
And we're just
So
getting
I,
it, yeah,
like,
right.
That's
no.
my challenge, like, I can only go back with,
We understand that, and
so
and we're all.
if you have that, I'm happy to go back and say, can you help me understand how this is what we have here versus what you're telling me?
Okay. So we'll put together a package.
We need better data for you, but it definitely doesn't jive.
So we'll have to put together another package for you as well. So-
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, again, this is from July 2018, like, that marker should be where you should supply data to me from, because that's what they're looking at, that's what they can see
Okay.
relative to this, so, I'd be happy, to go back and have another conversation, with them on this, have as many as we need to have. But I will also share this information with you, in a memo at some point. There's 1 or 2 pieces that I'm still waiting for them of things I asked them, but I will give it to you guys in a way in which you'll have it as well. I think that, their concern was giving me all this information, that they don't want every single housing authority coming forward right now and saying, oh, great, can you pull for us? So I would ask that we,
Just
Send it to
Don't
all the
broadcast.
housing authorities that we have. You're on TV right now.
yes, well, hopefully we're on TV in Shrewsbury, right? So, like, and, which I understand.
Nothing to see here, move along.
I mean, does anyone have any questions?
No, but thank you so
No, but
much.
thank
Thank
you,
you so
Hannah.
much, Hannah.
As always, a great job.
Hannah, yes, thank you very, very much for this. That was a rather quick learning experience for you and for us.
I just said to 2 of my colleagues, if you need to know anything about the CHAMP system, I'm a girl. Like,
But I think it's important that you know and that our residents know that we're concerned about local preference for our housing authority, because
Yeah.
the ones of us that ran for housing authority and that run for reelection, we have always prided ourselves in the fact that we serve local residents. And this CHAMPS program is kind of getting away from that, and it's hurting local preference.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Local housing authorities are quickly just becoming housing authorities, no local. That's if our hands are tied on X, Y, and Z, then there's only so much we can do. And, just a few years ago, we had a lot more control.
So
I
we
will
appreciate your work and your help.
I will say that one of the things, when I first got elected, I went and met with them when they were still designing the CHAMP system, and I had asked that they develop a 3-strike rule, that you can't just continue to get, you can't stay at the top of the list if you keep refusing places that And that is in effect, they did actually move forward with that, they call it like the global strike or something, but it's basically, if you refuse 3, you then go to the bottom list and you lose your preference or priority, like you get stripped of that. So that does help somewhat, I mean, there is a back. The other thing I just wanted to mention that I did ask them about, one of the last times I was here, we were talking about the potential for building more family housing. And I asked them, because there's a $1 billion backlog on maintenance, they don't have money to build new at this moment in time. But what they do have is they have technical assistance. If we have land, they can help determine how it might be able to be affordable, developed as affordable housing, and link with some of the partners that they have. So even though it's not under the guidelines of a local housing authority, it would be affordable housing that would be offered in our community. So that may be something that we want to have another conversation on at some point in terms of trying to move forward with this notion. And that would be a way to provide some family housing that we're probably going to be challenged to ever get through the system of having local preference, given the high level of need of people who qualify under priorities. So we may just want to move forward to having a discussion around that.
If in that discussion, we can also address the local preference issue, yes.
It wouldn't be a local, it would be a
be
Shrewsbury,
affordable
there's
housing.
none of that would apply.
Yeah.
This would be Shrewsbury affordable housing.
Okay.
So I think given where we're at as a community, that would be a good conversation to have relative to this, so.
Good.
So that's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you
Very
so
much.
much,
Very
Rep.
much.
Kane.
Thank you all, nice to see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I was gonna do that. That's it, right?
I was gonna.
Okay, we're all done. We don't want to get people up here. Hold on,
Thank you, Representative Kane. We have the Community Preservation Act discussion next on our agenda. Jason?
Over there, yeah.
As well? All right, sorry, my next meeting. Okay. We do have some material to review tonight.
Thank you.
And just so everybody knows, this is Jason Molina, and he is here to talk about a proposal for the Community Preservation Act, correct?
Yes, that is correct. Thank you so much. All right, and I'll just get this out here. We're going to review the stapled copy. Thank you so much. It has changed a little bit since.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Molina,
All right.
the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. All right, I will talk clearly,
He'll speak
loud.
up.
I'll speak up.
Jason has no problem being heard.
Thank you. Well, members of the Housing Authority, members of the community, thank you for your time tonight. I know it's getting late, and I will try to be as brief as possible in my words and our presentation. My name is Jason Molina, and this is
Barbara Kicker.
And we are 2 out of 5 members of a ballot committee which has been formed named Community Preservation Shrewsbury, where our mission is about speaking about the Community Preservation Act and adopting it here in Shrewsbury. So to get started, we will be talking, and we're also local residents, Shrewsbury residents, and we're also volunteers. Good question. So to get started, we're going to talk about what is the Community Preservation Act for those who may not already be aware of. The CPA, or Communities Preservation Act, has been enacted in 176 communities throughout Massachusetts, including Grafton, Northborough, and West Boylston, our neighbors. It establishes dedicated funding for open space and recreation, historic preservation, and affordable housing. These categories, as you may be aware, are hard to fund given the general budget, municipal budget, right? So think about all the things that are typically funded, like education, police, fire department, maintenance of our roads, water department. Those core services take a lot of the municipal budget, and rightfully so. Those are very important to our town. We want to make sure that we're educated, roads are safe, and we're safe in our homes and places. But for everything else, it's a quality of life conversation, again, for open space and recreation, historical preservation, and affordable housing. So CPA generates funds for those categories using a surcharge that would be added to your property tax bills of not more than 3%. So again, this is affecting property owners. The interest for this community obviously would be the affordable housing aspect of it and how we can fund initiatives in that space. So communities that adopt CPA also receive from the state a variable matching fund. So we put money in, the state gives us a little money back. Sometimes it varies, but $1 is better than none. And that's the way I see it. So now the question is.
Question right there, is
Yeah.
it typically a 1-to-1 or half-to-1 or the variable match?
It is a variable match.
Rule of thumb, but what do you see out there?
It initially started because the program started in 2000, so the initial communities that jumped on board got the 100% match.
Okay, and what is it at now?
Now it's about 30%.
All right, just curious,
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, now it's about 30%. And since you brought it up, and I'll just talk to that point, communities have.
30% is better than 0.
Exactly, 30% is much better than 0. And in the last legislative session with the budget process at the State House, they approved increasing the fees at the Registry of Deeds, which is how the state collects their funds. So every time there's a real estate transaction in Shrewsbury, buried within the fine print is about this little surcharge. And that surcharge gets sent to the state, and that funds the Community Preservation Fund at the state level. And then cities and towns that adopt Community Preservation Act, which we're proposing that we adopt it, we get a portion of that back. And last year, if we had adopted CPA, we would have received 30% of the money that was collected. I'll cover some more figures about that in
That's fine.
the accompanying slides. Okay, so turning to slide 3 for the folks who have the presentation. So what can CPA fund? There's a little chart that talks about, and there's a simplistic view in this presentation. In the clip attachment that you have has a legalese version of it for reading at another time. All right? But basically, the purpose of the CPA is to fund, to acquire, create, preserve, support, or rehabilitate and restore open space, recreation, historic preservation, or affordable housing. So the grid allows you to, in that picture, shows what is and what isn't allowed. So for the affordable housing piece, it is yes across the board. We can acquire affordable housing, we can create new housing, we can preserve existing housing, we can support existing housing, so long as it was supporting for folks that are gonna be in the categories of low income or low to moderate income seniors. And there's a HUD table that explains what those categories are. I'm sure this organization already is very familiar with those HUD tables. But I do want to, as a little asterisk, CPA legislation has a slightly different amount. So if we are so lucky and blessed to have the community adopt this, you'd want to look at that little fine print about how that varies slightly, just to make sure that we can count additional housing, if you so choose, to be part of the SHI housing stock, right, to reach our 10%. Okay, so what are the examples of CPA-funded projects? Barbara, if you want to go over the open space and recreation.
Okay. The open space and recreation, we can acquire open space property throughout Shrewsbury, which is something that a lot of residents are interested in. We can preserve more land. Something that we're also very interested in, preserving land related to water supplies for future water supply, or to protect our existing water supplies, which we don't at this time own all of the mandatory zone 1s in some of our wells. And also preserving parcels in town from development that we might want to protect, some small areas. We also could create a dog park, which is something that's very popular now in the state, through recreation. We have our trails committee now, and there we could expand trails. We could do some paving, as we did around Jordan Pond. We could complete paving around Jordan Pond for handicap accessibility. These are just ideas, nothing that anybody's promoting or thinking that we are trying to, we have in our back pocket. Just ideas I'm throwing out there. And also creating and rehabilitating playgrounds at schools that are now generally funded through PTOs.
Yep, exactly. And some of those, I mean, some of those playgrounds today were, constructed a long time ago, and to renovate them now would mean that they have to become ADA compliant, which is very important, obviously, for many of our communities, both young and old, to ensure that everyone is able to participate in that activity. And it's not limited to just, park playgrounds, right? Think about any of those trails. Think about just having an ability to have a bench at a pond, enjoy the scenery of that pond, enjoy the wild geese or the other fowl that come into that space. So it really is about, these projects are quality of life projects, right? It's not gonna be something that is gonna be germane to, well, should we fund a teacher or a police cruiser or a bench, right? And this is why CPA came about. It's about that quality of life. How do we fund things that can't get funded through the municipal budget? Again, keep that in mind. This is where CPA comes into play because it's dedicated just for those aspects. Okay, historic preservation, other examples of how CPA has been used, and just really good one here, to this organization. Historic buildings. Think about historic buildings in our community and other communities where maybe the property owner can't afford to maintain that building anymore. It's 4,000 square feet, too much, too big. But the town really thinks that property is really of interest as a historical building. And so if it truly is a historical building, as per some guidelines, like part of an inventory of historical places in Shrewsbury, or registered on a national or state registrar as a historic place, that place could be converted to affordable housing. So think about a property in Northborough that actually was converted a few summers ago with the Habitat for Humanity organization. They took an old building, made 4 units of it, and now there's four people living in a community they're from affordable housing. So I like to look at that as a two for one special, right? You preserve the old building and you got affordable housing at the same time through CPA funds and with the help of an organization called Habitat for Humanity, if you're familiar with that. Okay. Any questions so far? Cool. All right, so the next few slides I'm just going to cover, I'm going to highlight some communities. I talked a little bit about Northborough, but I just want to highlight some other things that they've done. Northborough with community preservation funds specifically. If you're familiar with it, Northborough created a brand new town common. There was some dilapidated buildings that were on the main street. The community thought it was important to have a town common. So they raised those buildings, purchased the land, renovated it, and it made it into a beautiful space that is accessible. There's benches, green space, and right next to their monument there as well. They're I think, one of their historic monuments that are present. Also, White Cliffs, right? If you remember the really old historic building in Northborough, that was slated for, could have been demolished. It could have been, sold to a developer and made into multiple homes. That community decided that it was in their best interest to preserve that building. They haven't decided what they want to do with it, but that's their concern, right? They wanted to at least keep the building from being demolished. And so they used CPA funds to keep that building in their community. Yes.
Jason, I see here at the little footnote, I was gonna ask you, and I started about to ask you.
Sure.
I was gonna say, how long has Northborough been doing this, but you were sharp enough to footnote it. But for the audience, Northborough adopted the CPA in 2004.
Yep.
So 15 plus years ago by my rough math. So it shows you, probably, Shrewsbury wouldn't be erecting a new common the year after, but it's worthwhile to note that once a Rolling Stone gets, a little momentum, it can be significant.
Because this is $3 million worth of.
Right, that's what I was just about to say as I picked up the paper, how long ago did they start? And I saw his footnote, but I wanted to at least answer my own question and let the audience understand.
I appreciate that, thank you.
We'll get to those numbers, it actually accumulates pretty fast.
It's good. All right, moving along at Grafton. So they've brought some land available in their community. Some examples there, but I'll call out one of the recreation pieces. There's a beach called Silver Lake. I have not been there, maybe some of you have been to Silver Lake. They spent $54,000 to add sand to their beach, add grills, a canopy, and improve handicap accessibility. Right, so think about some of those parks and places that today you're not able to get to, but only if there was improvements could you get to. All right, affordable housing in Grafton, they did purchase an affordable unit and made some light renovations to maintain its status. as SHI, right, to keep it into the housing stock. Okay,
Excuse me,
sure.
we say we have to leave because the van is picking us up at a certain time.
Oh, okay.
We
Oh,
don't
really?
want to be
That's-
rude, but you know.
Well, two things, can we tell the van to wait 20 minutes, or?
Try.
So,
What time is the van
Yeah.
showing up?
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, sorry about
we
that.
can tell them to wait 20 minutes. We won't wait, okay.
Francis, thank you.
I think, Jason, do you wanna hold for just a second so you're not disrupted?
I'm in the army, I don't volunteer.
Alright, all those that need to leave, I'm sorry, but feel free to do so.
Okay, I just told them I'm in the army, I don't volunteer for anything, but I look up to all volunteers. They should put a tip jar in the bag. Right?
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you for having us. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night. Thank you.
You too. Good work. Keep it up. The rest of us have a time limit.
We all have a time.
Judy,
Any day now, right?
we'll clear a space. We're gonna just take a short recess here.
Bye, people.
Bye.
Just pause the camera for a minute.
You started. The question was just asked as to why you're here and what is the purpose of your doing a presentation to the Housing Authority vis-à-vis our job versus
The selectmen or.
selectmen, whatever, who they've also, I think, made arrangements or maybe already given a presentation to. I can tell you that from one member's viewpoint of the Housing Authority, it is a program that does provide funds for affordable housing, which is right up our alley. And I think that for that reason, I was fine with them asking to come and do a presentation to us. I think that it's something that we all can pay attention to and make our own decisions about, because it is gonna be a ballot initiative that we're all gonna be voting on, those of us that wanna vote. So, if you are not interested in listening to this, the rest of it, then by all means, feel free to leave. I think that it's a matter of interest to some people here.
And to be fair, they formally reached out and requested and
And to
asked
be
to spot on
full-
an agenda, and we said,
Yeah,
yeah.
they asked to come here to give us this presentation, sure.
I just wondered.
And with that, we'll ask Jason to continue.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, thank you.
I appreciate the question, and actually, thank you for the comments, and I'll add one more thing to that. So a few slides ahead from now, there's gonna be a commission that will be created to manage the CPA funds. And one of the members on that commission would be a member of the Housing Authority. So this body is well needed to be versed in why we're asking the question, along with other authorities that are gonna be asked statutorily to be part of that commission.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you for the question.
thank you. All right, I'll move on to proposal of Shrewsbury, slide 8. So the ballot committee, we're proposing, instead of the 3%, which is allowed by the state statute, up to 3%, we're proposing a 1% surcharge on real estate property tax bills. So I'll cover a little chart about what that translates to, and again, this is against real property, right? Real estate properties. It's gonna be on the ballot, it's something we're proposing to have it on the ballot if it's approved by town meeting. It's a referendum, and the community can hold another referendum in the future if they decide that the community wants to revise the surcharge amount, if they want to affect any of the exemptions I'm gonna discuss, or revoke the adoption of CPA. So if the community after 5 years says, you know, this is not really working out for us, let's pull back, pull out of this. But I will say, thankfully, 176 communities have adopted CPA. Many have adjusted or tried to adjust their surcharge up or down. Many have added their exemptions. 0 have revoked it to date.
177 and 0.
That's what I hope, for us to be 177.
And
Okay.
just for clarification, out of how many cities and towns?
334.
335, is it?
No,
351?
351.
Oh, look at you, Gail.
Look at me.
Wow.
I have a mind for all these little useless.
So half.
50%. So half the state has been, has adopted it, which covers about 62% of the population of Massachusetts is under
Half of the
CPA.
number is 62% of the people.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Slide 9, and I'm 4 slides, just 13 slides
You're
total.
doing fine.
Okay. So slide 9 is, what does that mean as a property tax owner? So right there, smack in the middle of that chart is the average single-family property value at $478,603 to be exact. So if your house is in that range, like mine is, that would mean a $47.21 tax bill at the end of the year. Or in other words, your quarterly tax bill is about $12.
Can I make a comment for our audience before everyone starts wondering? I think everyone here knows, but it's worth saying that the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, all entities townwide, does not pay taxes. So the upshot for the people in the audience, going back to the person that said, how does this affect me? It can affect your ability to support or not support the ballot, but it will affect you financially, 0. 100% will not affect you, because we do, I think we've heard this term before, a pilot, a payment in lieu of taxes to the town, and that number is based on units and bodies and things like that, nothing to do with the real estate tax bill. So, sorry to interrupt, but I think it's important for our residents to know that they essentially don't pay real estate taxes in the conventional way, so there would be 0 effect.
So
for
it
you
doesn't
guys.
affect your rent,
Right, not at all. So,
although you get benefits from it.
yeah, that's what I was saying, you can
Exactly.
choose
There are a
support
lot
or
of
not,
benefits to
but
be
there's
had
no,
here.
you're not on the hook for any financial responsibility.
But also because of the amount that's being raised, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity here to add a lot of affordable housing, should that be a priority of the CPC that's added. So that's just for members that are also watching at home at some point, and other folks here that may have friends and family that still live in the community, still own a property, there are exemptions. So 100% of the surcharge will be exempted for low-income property owners. And also exempted are low to moderate income senior property owners, so seniors being 60 years of age and over. There is a HUD table that explains what that is. So that's available. If somebody has a question about that, I can go into any specifics about that, but that is defined. And then for all property classes, whether your house is worth $200,000 or $1 million or up, there is a $100,000 deduction off that value for the purposes of the surcharge. So why even do that? The point of doing that is because the lower your property is valued, we want to give you the best decrease of the surcharge. So you're affected the least, right? The lower your property value, the less you're impacted. Because the point of CPA is to keep people in their community. Affordable housing, right? It's about that quality of life for that community, right? It shouldn't be a burden. So with that means that now you look back at the table, at $200,000 property value, maybe a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, right on the lake, or right in next to Coolidge as an example, right? There's some properties that are really tiny. That property would be $12 for the year. Okay, so that's, they can see the difference there, so. All right, moving on. So on to slide 10. A 1% surcharge is estimated to generate $500,000 annually. $500,000. So with that, we also get an additional state match. If last year we had approved this, we would have received about 24%. That's $120,000 from the state, just for being in the program. Now, not printed there, but I do want to comment. Some folks have asked me, well, Jason, why don't you just have it go through the municipal budget? Now, as I said earlier, municipal budgets are focusing on core services of town, and at the very end, there's very little money for other things. But even through the municipal budget, you're not going to get a 24% return from the state, right? Even if you had an operational override, you're not going to get a 24% or maybe even better, right, return. So there's free money to be had. We know we want these projects. Here's a way to pay for them. And here's a way to get more money from the state to get it done.
I've often said there's nothing free.
So where does the state get the money from? again, from the transactions at the Registry of Deeds. So there's money already going into the pot, it's coming from somewhere, that is a very fair point. It's pretty obscure, right? It's either, if you've had, bought a house, sold a house, you've had a refinancing, you've had title changes, that's all a registration change, right? And so there's a fee in there, along with all the things you're paying for. All that money was going to the state.
So that's where all the increased fees that just went into effect are going?
Yes.
So $30 a document?
Yes.
Okay.
It's to prop up the trust fund at the state level.
For the CPA.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. Wrapping up, and slide 11 is to the point about, well, how is this gonna be controlled? It's a local control that will be overseeing the CPA funds. It's called the Community Preservation Committee. You want to stop?
So the board is gonna be, what we're recommending, and this can be decided later, but what we're recommending is a 9-member board. 5 of those members are mandatory as prescribed by the Community Preservation Act. 1 from the Conservation Commission, 1 from the Planning Board, 1 from the Historical Commission, 1 from the Housing Authority, and Parks and Cemetery Commission. And then there will be 4 members at large, and we can determine how those will be chosen. It will be either through the town manager, possibly, potentially the board of selectmen, and that can be decided how we determine those at-large members. But those 5 positions are required.
Does the Board of Selectmen support this?
We are getting to that. So we're meeting with the Board of Selectmen on February 25th, I think.
That's right.
And we've, had some communications with them. So, but right now, we're just on a roadshow, going to all of the, I think Jason's already done 8 or so, and other people have probably they've probably done a dozen. So we'll find out.
And by the time.
I think they will by the time we're.
Yeah, by the time.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, I didn't know if it was a foregone conclusion.
So by the time this gets to town meeting, will the at-large decision have been made as far as who chooses the at-large members?
So the makeup of the CPC will be a decision made after the November ballot.
By who?
It would be a bylaw that has to be written up. So the usual bylaw process, which is to form a committee, you're gonna have a warrant article with a proposal, whether the selectmen raise it or if our committee raises it after the election.
So during the first year of collections, basically, that's when this process takes place?
So the CPC would have to be established before the collection. So the ballot would be, so the process-wise, we would go to town meeting, either whether the selectmen raise the warrant or if our committee raises the warrant, we're seeking to speak about the proposal at town meeting, which will actually just have the actual write-up of the ballot question. And if town meeting approves the wording and that ballot question, it will go to the state to be put on the November state ballot. And if the Shrewsbury voters, approve it, then at that point, we would move to next year, which is have a warrant article related to a bylaw to establish the commission, and then we can, at that point, that process, we can talk about what's the makeup of that commission. There's 176 communities and 176 different permutations of those CPCs. So best to have that dialogue after the fact. There's no wrong or right way to do it. There's just a 5-member required with a 4 variability about whether they're appointed or they're elected, whether it's members of other boards that sit on it. Every community's been different about what they feel they want to add to it. But there is one thing that is important about the CPC, and that is there is a process already for projects that folks want to have, like maybe brand new buildings or expansions of buildings in towns or additional town services to the municipal side of the house. The intent of CPA was about community grassroots requests. So-and-so wants to have a bench over at some park. So-and-so feels that we should advocate for additional playground space. So-and-so wants to have, buy a little tiny property over here so we can save whatever that may be. It's really community projects that CPA was really geared towards. Now, it doesn't mean that it has to be the small things. It can also be big things, right? But think about the park space or the fields. Maybe there's a field in town that you want to have renovated. It hasn't been maintained, and we want to make that a better place for the community to enjoy. So, it's opportunities.
I have a question. Maybe I missed something, but I heard you talk about ball
Sheila,
fields.
Sheila, why don't we let him finish his presentation?
Well, I'm just wondering, because I feel there's something that they're missing.
Okay, well, why don't you let him finish his presentation, then you can ask the question, okay?
Okay.
Thank you. So besides those groups, the other part of it is that funds that will be collected will be allocated at minimum 10% or spent annually to each of those categories. And then there's also a 5% that's allowed for administrative oversight for the CPC itself, that organization.
I think it's also important to point out that each of the CPC projects go to town meeting for approval. So the committee will review all the proposals, they'll make recommendations on which ones they like, and then it will go to town meeting for final approval.
Every proposal goes back to town meeting.
Exactly, because town meeting is the body that authorizes funds. The CPC is just that method to go through and say, reviewing the project, make sure it adheres to the legalese about what is fundable, and then also to make sure that there is money, right, to fund it. It's a sound project, so. With that, I'm open to any questions.
Okay, now Sheila, you can ask your question.
Thank you.
I heard you talk about recreation, ball fields, benches, helping people stay in Shrewsbury. What about the historic value of Shrewsbury? I thought in the beginning you mentioned historic preservation.
Yes.
We've just seen a meeting with the town selectmen where they found properties with over 600 acres of either property or buildings that the town has taken for taxes. Some of these properties the town has had since 1917. They've also allowed some of these properties to go for auction, like the Howard Allen place, built in 1803. They did nothing but put it up for auction. They sold it at a small percentage of what that property should be worth. That property should be worth over $1 million. They sold it for $345,000. So why shouldn't this program that you're proposing do something to save a historic home in town from being turned into a bed and breakfast?
Well, I certainly, I personally, not speaking for the ballot committee, but I personally share your sentiments. There's plenty of opportunity in Shrewsbury. But I will say that that is an opportunity that could be had through CPA because the funds would be available. Funding, this question, it will be about funding. It would be up to the CPC, which is that committee that would be formed after the adoption, if we're so lucky. And they will review projects, so imagine, if you will, Shrewsbury already adopted CPA, and there's a CPC, and you were in front of CPC today. You would be making the same pitch we were just speaking about right now, saying that property is historic, and we'll have, there's some inventory that says, yes, it is historic, because it was from a certain date. And, there would be a question of, well, what can we do with this property? And so other communities have been facing this, like Northborough. They took that old historic building, they purchased it, renovated it with Habitat for Humanity, and converted it to 4 affordable housing units. So that's an
Or
opportunity.
they could have made it a museum like the Artemis Ward property.
That's an option too, or you could just purchase it in advance to then figure out what you're gonna do with, just like White Cliffs, right? That's the other example, right? So there was plenty of opportunity that could have been had if this funding was available. But I do wanna stress that there are plenty of examples through our community about what you could have done with CPA. I do wanna say that our effort tonight in our conversation and heading into the ballot, if we're so lucky, through town meeting approval, is about the funding mechanism. Do you adopt having CPA available in our community, the 1% surcharge, the exclusions that talked about, and then we can say, what are some opportunities that we could afterwards?
I think it's an excellent idea.
Okay, thank you, Sheila.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions? No. Well, I think that was a very interesting presentation. Thank you very much. Do you have any questions, sir?
I'm just a little unclear. At what exact point are you in the process? Have you gone before the selectmen?
We are scheduled to speak to the selectmen on February 25th.
Okay.
Well,
So
we're
this is-
tentative, yeah, we're
This is
making
a
our way.
feeler kind of thing?
Well,
it's-
they've asked us.
Informational, I mean, it's all
Yeah.
informational, so, they're doing their presentations, trying to get the support of the various committees, so.
One of the questions that the Board of Selectmen asked us is, have you talked to the boards in town? So we're starting to kind of get the word out, get, feel from the community, and then we'll have more information when we
Great,
talk to them.
thank you.
Yeah, but the first step is to get it on town meeting warrant, and then hopefully it will get to the ballot in the fall.
Does anybody else have any questions? I guess you did a good job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
very much.
thank you all for your time, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The next meeting date is going to be March 11th, which is going to be a Wednesday, here at the Towers. It's going to include budget discussion, so it could be a long one.
Buckle up.
Make sure you bring a snack. Anybody else have anything else? How about anybody out here? Everybody okay? Yes, ma'am.
There's a small group here that's looking for permission to have a yard sale in the spring.
Okay, you can deal with Kelly on that.
She said to deal with you.
Did you?
Kelly, that doesn't sound like you.
That doesn't sound like Kelly.
Didn't we write a policy on
Yeah, we did.
Yeah, there's a form to
Francis?
fill out.
Yeah, in a form, yeah.
There's a form to
I'm
fill
not having
out.
deja vu.
You can deal with Kelly on this. It's something that,
Outside and in.
we have a policy.
We created a policy, you were here, Kathy, right?
Yep.
So like a year or two ago, we created a policy.
We have a policy that she can review with you, and you can fill out the form, and see if you can comply with it. Yes, yes.
So, but on that form, so come see me tomorrow, on that form, if you're charging or receiving money for the intake, I need to see how much money you've taken in, what you're gonna be doing with the money. It needs to be,
That's for our Christmas party.
but I still need to see a budget and
No
receipts.
problem, we got no problem there.
There won't be any receipts though.
There ain't gonna be no receipts, it's gonna be what we took in.
Okay,
Yeah,
For
it's-
the
We get
amount
it.
of money you
Alleged.
took
Yeah,
in.
a legend, yeah, we're gonna have a legend.
we get it.
Well,
Al, you wanna speak?
Yeah, I just wanna thank the Towers for,
Quiet, please.
We're still meeting here, folks.
quiet, will you please? I just wanna thank the people in the Shrewsbury Towers for the Toys for Tots. I have a letter from the Toys for Tots. We filled 2 boxes, and we got them late, but I just wanna thank the people, because I got this January 12th, so you guys already had the meeting. And I just wanna say thank you again to the people in this Towers.
Well, I think you all should be commended, and congratulations. I think it's a wonderful thing. Thank you.
And I just wanna thank the people that are supporting me and the stuff that I'm doing for the Towers here. I get a lot of vibes from the people in this Towers, and I appreciate the help that they're giving me.
Good. Thank you, thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Just like, I feel like I'm the witness that just got into the Senate chamber. But I really would like to share something from my heart to you people, is that okay?
I hope so.
Yes, okay. I've been here in the Towers for a few years, and when I came here, I was asked along with somebody else to pick up the organization that we had here to do nice services for the people in this Towers community, which I was delighted to do. We planned events, food events and fun events, and we plan things for the different holidays during the year, etc. Trying to build community. And one of the things that is very, very important to me is building community. This is our home. And we need to do what we can do for one another and to build one another up. But this has all of a sudden changed here. And we are not allowed to do these things anymore. And I'm only speaking from myself, what I see. I can't speak for somebody else. But it seems since somebody came in here from outside to do something that she needed to do for a degree or for whatever it was, we became an experiment. And the things that has happened here have not been all positive for all of the community here at the towers. We were told what we can eat and what we can't eat, what we should do and what we shouldn't do. You said earlier, Richard, that as long as it's not from outside, we're allowed to cook things in the kitchen and stuff. We're not allowed to do that anymore. Things have been taken away from us in the kitchen. We have to pay for our own coffee now, and we have to hide our stuff someplace else in order to, have a little gathering. We can't do it anymore. People used to volunteer here to make a meal. We were supposed to have soup and sandwiches last Saturday, I think it was. Was told he couldn't do it because he doesn't have what do you call it? Certification to be a cook, so we're not allowed to be in there and do that anymore. And I just want to say, I try my best to build a community. I love the people here. I teach a Bible course here. People are wonderful, but people are getting depressed at the towers. I see it more and more. They're angry, they're depressed, and something needs to be done because I don't understand. So I'm the one who's got the courage to stand up and say something about this. Yes, and I ask you to please take it very seriously because something is wrong here. And it's not the way it used to be. We used to have committees and people for years and years who used to form a group here that brought us in for fun and food, and some of these gals were on it for years and years, and it was wonderful. All of a sudden, nothing goes. There's anger, there's depression. And I beg of you, please do something about it.
Okay.
May I add? Thank you. One of the things that was brought up that I heard was that the person who was going to make a soup and a sandwich, all of a sudden it went away. And I was told the reason it went away was because the people using the kitchen were not certified. The young man who was nice enough to decide that he would make the soup, somebody else would make the sandwiches. He went to culinary school. He has an education in that. That should count as a certification. So I don't understand why we couldn't even have the soup and a sandwich.
Well, I can tell you that, as you may recall, earlier this evening, I mentioned that although it was recommended that someone that's working in the kitchen get these certifications, it is not required. So we are not going to require that, and we encourage your use of the kitchen.
So I don't understand why the soup and sandwich went away because of certifications.
Well, I don't know why either, maybe.
Brian's right over there. Brian, I don't mean to put you on the spot. So I brought Brian in because the sign was put up in the hall that Brian was gonna be making the soup. And so I brought Brian in, and I asked him how he was paying, because people were charged $5 per person.
That's what
Big deal.
We did that for supplies for all the other meals we
And so
had.
on this community room, even Francis Gardens, Elizabeth Street has to do this. They need, if you're charging, you can't charge in the community room. It says it's not for
How
profit.
come they're doing it for years?
30 years.
30 years.
I've been here 30 years.
All right, just let her talk, okay, please? Let's try to be polite.
So when the auditors come in, they ask me. So if charging, I need to prove the receipts, the budget. There's other people that say that it's going towards something else. I'm asking for receipts and a budget regarding the soup and the sandwich. So when I talked to Brian said he was going to go shopping with Al and Annie. I said, Brian, all I ask is you put what you're making for soup aside and just give me the receipt so I can prove that whatever they're taking in for the money.
Is not a profit.
Correct.
Who do you prove it to?
Yeah, can I ask a question before we?
I mean, that's what who is asking for this
Yeah.
proof?
So the board adopted this policy
When?
also.
Now, he didn't say
I
anything
don't-
about that.
I don't recall
Can I
coming to a meeting
I got-
where it was
I got a
discussed.
question.
Wait a minute.
Let Annie talk.
It's 1 year this month that we started this, and we hadn't heard this for 11 months. Why all of a sudden? this
Because of
came
one
up?
person.
Why, after almost a year, well, a year, that this came up about receipts and proof and all this picky-you stuff has come up after 11 months. Why?
1 year.
I don't understand. A whole year went by.
Point of order, do you have a policy?
Yes.
The housing authority have a policy? Is it written anywhere?
Yes.
The person that
And
wants
so-
to do something?
Whoever asks to use the community room gets a copy of the policy. Like Annie signs it, Al signs it.
Okay.
And so, once they signed
And
it,
it goes smoothly that way, right?
I sign it, I give it back to them, and I highlight. Just make sure you do
Okay,
receipts.
that's your understanding now?
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought our policy was just about using the
room, I didn't think it was about accounting for the money.
No one's answering the question.
Questions never get answered. Why after a whole year?
After a whole year, why after a whole year? This is what, like Sue brought up. This is the problem here.
It's changed.
Everything's changed. There's a lady sitting down the end, Jeannie. She's been here 30 years. Never had that policy in effect. And all of a sudden, now it's coming because we're trying to help this community. We're trying to get the people out of the apartments. And I'm trying to do something nice. And every time we go to her, we got thrown out of her office because we started asking her questions. She says, I don't want to hear it. The meeting's dismissed. And Andy will tell you the same thing. The two of us went in 2 days ago. Was it Friday? I think it was Friday we went in. And she threw us out. I mean, you guys are supposed to be helping us. And I'm trying to do something for the community here. And nobody's doing nothing here. Every time we go to ask her a question, we get thrown out. This is supposed to be, like you said, Richard, this is our place.
It's your home.
Our home.
Right.
And I got another question. We bought, now,
Al,
the money.
Al, one of the reasons why she probably threw you out is because you yell.
No, I know, that's the way I am because I had problem with my hearing and I talk loud.
Okay.
I told that to her when I first met her. She says, Al, calm down. I says, that's the way I am. I
With
talk
all due
loud.
respect, her is Kelly.
Kelly, yes,
You
no,
can
I
use your name, you're
apologize.
speaking of
I
her.
apologize.
Okay.
Listen, we'll revisit this, okay? I think we need to revisit this policy and take a look at it again, if it's not working. So,
You don't shoot the messenger.
so I think we can all agree to revisit the policy and take a look at it in light of the fact that you folks are saying that it's not working, okay? We're here to help you, you know that.
I hope you're here to help us.
Well, geez, I think I have been for
No,
quite a
yeah,
while,
no,
Long before you got here, pal.
Probably, you probably have.
I can tell you this, we'll revisit this policy and see whether there's some tweaking that needs to be done. Sometimes, listen, my understanding was that the question, going back a little bit in my memory, that the question of receipts came up because of an auditor's question about receipts and what you're doing, collecting money, and are you using it all, or are you keeping excess, and if you are keeping excess, where is that going? So,
I think that's the state law, isn't it?
it is. So, I mean, there has to be a workable solution here, Al. All right?
Yes, it should be.
So let us try to revisit this policy with Kelly, if you will bring that to our next meeting for discussion, and get us all a copy of the policy prior to the meeting so that we can review it. Then we will revisit this and see whether there's some way we can accommodate you. I don't like to hear that, you know, you're not able to use the facilities. I'm not liking that at all. You know, our whole purpose here is to make sure that your life is as comfortable as we can help you make it.
Well, that's the problem, we're not using the facility like we should be using it.
Well, so let us take a look at it, Al. I mean, that's what we're here for. We're a policy-making board, that's what we do. You need to understand that the boss, as far as the day-to-day operations of this authority, sits to my right, it's Kelly. So, if she tells you to calm down, I'd ask you to do that, okay? As much as it's against your nature. The fact is that we'll work with you here. We'll try to get to the bottom of it, and we'll see whether or not.
We're not getting answers.
Well,
I mean, how many times you gonna go to a person and you don't get the right answers?
Well, I'm not gonna beat this to a pulp here.
Okay,
we're gonna revisit
yeah,
the
all right,
policy,
well, I'll
okay?
let it go that way.
Yeah.
But I got a question, why, where does the money come for the coffee hour? Does it come from the machines that we own?
Is that operational? I don't know the answer.
Isn't that from the Shrewsbury Towers? I mean, isn't that from the towers upstairs
No, it's a-
that we get,
It's a budget item. I mean, it comes out of our general budget. But the money that comes from the antennas,
yeah, well, I mean, do they?
all right, that doesn't have any
Yeah,
specific.
I heard a lot of story that they left us so much to give to the residents of the towers.
No.
That it could be used on this
This-
facility and
we-
not a state
We've always
facility.
used it specifically for this facility,
Okay, you're right.
for beautification or for enhancement of your living experience in this facility. And that includes adding money to the budget, which does fund things like the coffee hour, things like cookouts. I think we've gotten food for the cookouts and things like that. So, so the simple question to your answer is that the antenna money is used to supplement the funds that are used to operate this facility.
Well, no, I understand that, but
There's nothing earmarked, there were no earmarks at
Okay.
all, no.
Now, is the money come from the,
Vending machines.
vending machines?
Kelly can answer that.
So the antenna and the candy money offset subsidy. In next month, the accountant will be here. He goes line item by line item.
It all gets accounted for in the budget, that's the thing. It all gets pulled in and
Because you
accounted
never know, because nothing's ever said on Kelly's, discussion, how much profits made out of those machines. I thought you have to have, you know, every, like, cash coming in, receipts. You're telling us we need, isn't that correct? Isn't that supposed to be,
That money is
supposed to be
accounted for.
talked?
That money's accounted
That
for.
money's accounted for. She's telling us it's accounted for. The accountant, I'm sure, does count it and does pay attention to
Is
it.
it the line item right there?
Do you have a line item on the
Yeah,
budget
it's
then?
under sundry office.
Sundry office.
So that's under the sundry office funds. So it is not labeled specifically vending machine. but it falls within funds from various categories that all get added up to that. So, Kelly, I mean, is there any other way to explain the vending machine money? I mean, it is accounted for,
Well, I mean, it doesn't say if you made profit on it. I thought when you, on a board, you're supposed to itemize each item. You know, what you're taking in from each.
Well, we do, in terms of the budget, we do itemize all expenses and we itemize all revenue.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but you
All
got a
revenue from all
machine here,
sources.
if you're making profit on it, you gotta write it down, put it down at, what you're making off that machine.
Well, I don't think we get to that
think
detail.
we do.
Break it down, I don't know how.
We don't get to that detail. I mean, no. That's a little bit too minutia. I'm
And
afraid.
getting back to the certification, I gotta ask a question on the certification. I know when I worked at Worcester County House of Correction, we all had to be certified. Does everybody in Kelly, the office people, in maintenance, do they have to be certified with the feds? I know the state, anybody that worked for this, we all had to be
Certified
certified.
in what manner?
Certified how?
Well, I had to learn CPR, I had to learn choking. I got certified in the 10 years I was there. So,
Well, it's a different job, first of all, a correctional institution like that.
I thought federal is the same way, anybody that's in federal, and especially where there's 100 people, well, you don't even have a fibrillator here, do you?
No,
No.
no, but we should.
But we should. You got over 100 people here. You should be a fibrillator in here.
Well,
I'm surprised the fire department,
all right, listen.
I mean, you guys, she's getting picky-anty with us on certification.
It's not her getting picky-anty with you, okay? I'm not gonna get in an argument with you about this, all right? The fact is that she's got her job, she's the executive director, all right? She's in charge, all right? We will look at the policy, okay? The fact is that I said this before, and I've said it a couple of times already tonight, which is, although certification is certainly something that we'd love to see you do, okay, it is not required, all right? But it is something that you should consider. All of you should consider that, because it's for your benefit. So, if you've got people in the kitchen cooking for you, you should all think that it'd be nice to have that person be certified. And it's not a hard process,
I know, like I said, I took.
so do it.
I take it every year, I used to take it every year at the jail.
So then do it, and it's done.
Well, who pays for it? I mean, the jail paid for mine, certification.
Mary, what did it cost?
Sounded funny.
Excuse me?
What did it cost?
$1,000.
And who paid for it?
I did.
That's good, that's it.
Well, we will reimburse them, because the
I was
housing
just gonna
authority
say,
will pay
I
for
would
that.
totally support that as an expenditure of the authority.
No, that's a
Mario went
personally.
on his own and brought it all the way down. So it wasn't that I called Mario in to say, let's do it.
And Mario, does the board agree on that?
Okay, so,
I
we're not here
have,
to punch in bags.
I have a comment. There are two things that I would like to have this board revisit. Number one, it took 2 years.
Please be quiet when someone else is talking.
It took about 2 years, if I remember right, but I had a stroke, so I might be wrong, okay? That this building would become no smoking. We went through presentation after presentation after presentation, even by somebody who shall remain, not you, but you mentioned somebody who shall remain nameless, okay? About stopping smoking, making the building non-smoking. HUD got involved, you said you had to wait for the guidelines from HUD. We've done all that. this is still a building where smokers are still permitted to smoke in their units, and then it filters through all of the filters in the building, comes into apartments where other people have even had to relocate from one apartment to another because the smoking was making them sick. There are still people smoking and using marijuana in the building, regular cigarettes in the building, and it's making other people sick. So I think the board needs to revisit. We were told that we were gonna get these fancy little things that detected the smoke, and then you could take somebody to court to get them evicted eventually. I heard somebody this week brag about having gotten 12 letters from management because of smoking use in the building. We're told that if we notice this, to call the police. If somebody is abusing alcohol or drugs in the building, call the police. We call the police, they come here, we do everything that they tell us to do. It's the same offenders all the time. And this is why a lot of people that live here are very frustrated that things have happened. We've been told, yes, we're gonna become a non-smoking building, and this is gonna stop. People are still smoking, abusing drugs, and using alcohol, and they're all over the building. And it's the same offenders. And I think this is something that needs to be revisited, whether it's the smoking, whether it's the marijuana or drug use. If it's the same offenders, in Worcester, you get one offense. And they evict people. They've made it public knowledge in the newspaper.
Is that true?
So why not here?
So, legal counsel has been here. I've had judgment on somebody in this building. We have to keep on going back to court, back and forth, back and forth. If somebody's smoking, I just can't go up, give them a piece of paper and say that you're evicted. There's a whole process,
Oh, I
Sheila.
understand there's a process, but if it's the same offenders all the time, and this has been over a year that we've been non-smoking, right?
Oh, yeah.
2 years,
Oh, yeah.
2016.
2.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why
Is this a
we
federal
can't
building?
revisit
Federal building,
the
you can't
issue.
smoke.
Well,
No,
I'll tell you what,
I was told one of the reasons why they didn't go
well, I'll tell you what we'll do,
to very
Sheila, is,
expensive equipment was because of the cost.
although next meeting we won't have probably enough time to review that policy as well. Perhaps we'll put it on for the next, yeah.
I mean, people were wondering why
Well, I mean,
people are
in terms of eviction,
disgruntled
I mean-
living here and
So I
frustrated.
have Dan. So I meet with Dan, so say we get 5 calls. Mr. Driscoll says that you need to either see the person smoking or you need to smell it. So the one that I had was I knocked on the door, person opened up the door, right there, smoke was coming out. So I called Dan, and since I saw it and I can issue the warning or whatever, we went right into court. I'm not gonna bring,
And what did the court do?
we entered into a judgment, agreeing that the person is not gonna smoke in the apartment. Not,
And if they do?
then we'll be back into court again.
So that's what the judge decided, so you can't do
Yeah.
anything
Can't do
about
it. If the
it.
judge decides, your hands are tied.
Yes. I can call around, and I know Worcester very well,
Why don't you call Worcester and find out what they're
that of how many evictions they've had regarding smoking, and they've had none. People have left on their own, but taking the person all the way to court,
We have a security guard that's here on Friday and Saturday, and he roams the building like he's supposed to, and he has told me himself that he can tell wherever he's walking where the smoke is coming from.
But he's.
And he writes a report.
He does write a report. I read it every day. That helps me also.
But we still
But-
gotta get a judge to act.
Yeah, and the judge is wrong.
You got a person leaving next month because of the smoking. She's leaving the property because she can't, because she's,
And she's got emphysema?
yes. Yeah, she's getting it, she's leaving the end of next month. Oh, the end of this month, I'm sorry, this month. I'm sorry, Rich.
That's sad
This
to
month.
hear. I mean, the fact is that we've been battling this
I
smoking
know.
battle for now 2 years, and.
I think our floor is the only one, I'm not sure, I can't say. But our floor has, no, our end of the, fourth floor, you can't smell it.
Well, you're lucky. You're lucky, yes ma'am. Yes ma'am.
Is there any such thing as eviction?
Well, that's what we're talking about, yeah.
The problem is judges, the problem is judges are, very, very tenant-friendly. In almost all cases, and I'm speaking in a generalization, but it is a broad and true generalization, judges are very, very reluctant to evict people. Certainly evict subsidized
Now,
people.
that's not to say
They
that,
won't, but I'm just trying to shed
that's
some
not
color.
to say that we aren't willing to bring people to court for smoking violations. Kelly has done that. The problem is that, you know.
This was another whole issue, this was a whole
The-
drug
the-
issue, that this person has been with bragging this past week,
Yeah.
and she's been evicted 12 times, and was laughing at you.
From here?
Yeah,
And
she's
this is
still,
drugs.
she
She
says,
bragged
I'm
about
getting
it.
evicted, and she's laughing, and she says, I'll never get evicted.
That's my point.
That's our point.
That's exactly the point I'm making.
I mean, she's laughing about it.
It's laughable.
Did you ever think of breaking your ankle?
Someone in the back.
Yes, ma'am?
I know somebody on my floor that knocked on my door, blames my boyfriend for smoking. He hasn't smoked in 3.5 months, okay? Because he has a health issue with water in his lungs, he's right over there, okay? Why is she not getting talked to? I can smell smoke coming out of her apartment, and she's telling me to mind my other business. She swears at me all the time.
Well,
She knocks on my
the
door,
lady that has
tells
to be
me
relocated
that my
was
boyfriend better stop
relocated
smoking.
because of.
One at a time.
All right.
One at a time.
Okay, all right. So listen, the board has a smoking policy, in fact, it has a no smoking policy, okay? We can't do any more than that, although we can ask our executive director to try to do more. The fact is that you know, we have to deal with the court system, we have to deal with the reluctance of the court system to evict people and to actually put them out on the street
Is
for
it
smoking.
possible to
No,
go
judges-
to a different court system?
Well, why isn't it a federal law?
I don't know, why is it
I don't know.
it's a federal building, I mean, why doesn't the federal government do something about it where
Well, this is a
Kelly
question
is
that I'm
bringing
not
it,
qualified
bringing
to
it
answer.
to court?
Beyond your pay grade.
Yeah.
Let's get Hannah back here.
Listen, the bottom line is, listen, folks, we're gonna revisit the use of the kitchen and the community room policy. We'll take a look at that and see whether there's something we can do about that, okay? As far as the smoking goes, or the no smoking goes, Kelly is still working on it. She's gonna have to continue to take people to court if she has to. Whoever is bragging about it, you know, it's a sad situation, it really is. It's too bad that you have to live with it, but we're working on it, okay?
When, like, for instance, like when we see somebody that's obviously high
Okay.
because of drug use and alcohol, okay? And we call the police, they come down, they pick up the person, the following day they're back, the behavior is back, and the arrogance about, I'm getting away with it.
Well, that's
Is
true.
why so many people are depressed here
Okay.
and upset about how the community has changed, the culture that has happened.
Well, I think you're right. Yes, sir.
Kind of switching gears, I think people are not comprehending what you said a couple times now, that Kelly found out that certification is not required.
Right.
And that it's just recommended. But is there a possibility that the housing authority might have like a person willing to come down here or volunteer and maybe teach people? And the other question is, what about putting like anti-choking signs, you know, in the kitchen, things like that? I mean, signs are worth the paint they're painted with.
I'm running training
Well,
class for
But most, you know, most restaurants and kitchens, you see that kind of harmless.
Well, those are ideas.
CPR.
And we're open to anything, I mean,
If you can
willing
get
to
someone to do
reimburse
that.
people or
We're
stuff like
willing to
that.
reimburse for the course. I mean,
Can the fire department teach
Richard,
CPR to a
7:30,
group?
and I haven't had supper yet.
Yeah.
They do
Me and you both. What do you have? What do you have?
all right,
Have it soon.
I'll entertain a motion to,
Motion to adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
We already seconded.
second,
Second, yeah.
all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.